I am very fortunate that I don't have any food restrictions or allergies, at least none that I know about. It means that I get to try a wide array of foods, including afternoon tea. Tea itself would not be the issue. To my knowledge, Camellia sinensis doesn't contain allergens, and there are tisanes, purely herbal concoctions that don't contain caffeine for those who don't partake, on every tea menu I've ever seen. But afternoon tea, as I said in my previous video, usually includes scones, pastries, and finger sandwiches, and all of those things have gluten. Luckily, cutting gluten from one's diet has been popularized in recent years, regardless of a celiac disease diagnosis. Many restaurants now point out gluten-free options, and afternoon tea places have followed suit. Unfortunately, in most cases, requesting gluten-free offerings, or even vegetarian offerings, needs to be done far ahead of time and cannot be done spontaneously. And then there is the Queen Mary Tearoom. A staple of Seattle for 30 years, the Queen Mary Tearoom is the oldest independently owned tea room in the United States, and, always available, is their gluten-free menu. So when one of my best friends, who happens to be gluten-free, was visiting me, the Queen Mary Tearoom suddenly popped into my head. And so, extremely last minute, I made a reservation for a gluten-free afternoon tea for two, and one not gluten-free, because I got the normal version, because I needed to have that quiche again. As with my last afternoon tea review, I will start with the ambiance. The Queen Mary Tearoom really goes all in with the decor. Frilly curtains, chipped teaware turned wall art, ornate mirrors and frames, fake flowers, and beautiful dark wooden paneling lining the walls are just some of what you can expect. It's loud and proud of its British-inspired service. Each table is prepared with beautiful, unique teaware, sugar bowls with colorful sanding sugar, and silver teapots with flowers inside. The spoons are beautiful silver, the china is gorgeous, and the energy in the room is thrumming. And that might be the weakest part of the experience, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. I much prefer the robust energy of a restaurant where everyone is enjoying themselves to a stuffy, silent room where it feels like if I speak, I'm breaking some sort of code. But I'd be remiss if I didn't point out how busy this space can be. If you're looking for a tea room that feels more like a quiet meal in a garden, perhaps you'd prefer getting your tea to go and sitting on the patio at the Queen Mary Emporium, a separate shop just down the street where you can buy the tea you taste at the tea room. On to the rest of the ambiance. The service at the Queen Mary Tearoom is impeccable. The staff are all fairly knowledgeable about tea and break down the menu for you if it's your first time attending. The first course, a sorbet with an epiphany-inspiring shortbread cookie or awe-inducing rainbow gluten-free meringue, comes out quickly once you've ordered, as does the rest of your service once it's prepared. Mary herself, the owner, operator, and recipe creator of the Queen Mary Tearoom, has popped by both times I've eaten there to say hi to her patrons. She's a lovely woman who speaks very highly of her mother, who was the original baker for the tea room when they opened in 1988 and has since retired. Talking to Mary and hearing her describe the various years the tea room has been through really solidifies it as a wonderful local institution that deserves all of the support it's received. And now, a rather strange note to end on, the bathrooms. They're single occupancy, non-gender specified rooms, and the walls are absolutely covered in artwork and other fun Easter eggs. Apparently Julie Andrews has visited the tea room. One negative point, both my husband and my friend noticed a sign that says something like, "Gentlemen, we know you were dragged here, but we encourage you to try something new and enjoy the tea," which just feels antiquated and not in a good way. We support vintage aesthetics, not vintage values, as I've heard the internet say. That being said, the bathrooms are amusingly kitschy, turned up to 12 versions of the rest of the decor in the tea room, and honestly, I kind of love them. For this gluten-free focused review, I believe this needs to be the most important part. What is the menu like? What are the differences? Does the gluten-free menu feel lacking compared to the standard menu? Let's look at the two menus side by side. You can see that there are plenty of offerings on both menus, and that the Queen Mary Tearoom has taken a lot of care in replacing the glutinous offerings with equally delicious alternatives. The gluten-free cranberry orange scone was delicious. The various finger sandwiches had the same flavors but on crostinis, and the pastries, the sausage roll and the quiche, are replaced with an original and delectable cheese ball on crostini, as well as an extra large helping of the creamy, cozy, delicious tomato basil soup. The desserts differed a bit more. Instead of a pecan bar, there was a pecan and coconut truffle-like ball, there was a creamy Nutella-like mousse, and there was a petite macaron, which in my opinion might have been better than the glutinous brownie that I got. Overall, my friends thought that the gluten-free variation was incredible, the best afternoon tea they'd had, which fits with how incredible I think the gluten-filled menu is. The menu is thoughtful, the food is well crafted, well balanced, and all the flavors pack a punch. And now on to the common denominator, the tea. The Queen Mary Tearoom has Queen Mary brand tea, which you can buy at the Emporium, as I mentioned earlier. They have a range of flavors and varieties, from those usually served with milk and sugar, like English breakfast, to a white tea usually sipped on its own, and teas with different levels of caffeine, from decaffeinated black teas to the aged pu'er that I rarely find on afternoon tea menus. As I said earlier, sugar is on the table when you sit down, milk is served with the tea, and honey is available upon request. The teapot is served with the tea leaves in a strainer inside, and when the pot is put in front of you, the server flips over the tea timer and explains which pots will be done at which point in the timer. It's extremely elegant. After that, you remove the strainer and place it on a small provided dish to keep it from dripping everywhere. Exactly the kind of tea brewing strategy one would expect from a tea room that's been open for over 30 years. The tea is delicious and easily customizable. If you like a weaker brew, you can pull the leaves before the timer is done and even put them back in if you need to. If you're remembering my afternoon tea review of Cedar and Elm, you might be thinking, well, sure, but you don't get to taste as many teas as you would like. And you're not quite wrong, but one wonderful thing the Queen Mary Tearoom does is have their servers walk around with small tea taster shot glasses. Their goal is to have you taste at least 2 different teas during your service. And don't forget that you and your other afternoon tea-going friends each have a huge pot of tea, so it's quite easy to pour your company a cup and try one of theirs in return. All in all, it's exactly the kind of tea experience that I prefer with an afternoon tea. In conclusion, the Queen Mary Tearoom is one of the best tea experiences I've ever had, and a wonderful gluten-free experience as well. One of the servers even talked about how they'd been coming to the tea room for years, specifically for the gluten-free selection. If you want what I'd consider to be a pretty perfect afternoon tea experience, the Queen Mary Tearoom is the place I'd recommend.